Where do you want to start with some guys that made some money this week? I'll kind of hand it over to you. Who do you think stood out the most and maybe raised their stock the most this week in Mobile?
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about the top 100 kind of guys. I know they steal the spotlight, but just for a minute before we get into some of those guys, Jarvis Brownlee from Louisville, the corner. I was a bit skeptical at first because I walk around and I do kind of I call it a height check when we get on the field of I'll look around and kind of get on my toes and walk around a little bit. And I'll go try to find people to stand next to. If you're taller than me, I'm like, okay, good. You're up there. If you're shorter than me, if you're smaller than me in stature, then I start to say, okay, maybe questionable. And Brownlee was one that, he's a thinner guy and he's not super tall at corner. And I was, okay, kind of an undrafted grade. And the reason I was looking at him is he made some plays on the first day. And I was like, I wonder where he could stand. Where could he go? And then he made plays on the second day. And I said, okay, I don't really care about your height. I don't really care about your weight. You're just beating good players here in one-on-ones. And then we get to the game and he has an interception and he's out there kind of, being a dog, as they say, at the cornerback position. And now I'm looking at, okay, was this a draftable player? Was this a 7th round guy, maybe 6th round guy? Now I'm looking at him as a solid day 3 projection. So in terms of making money, I think he's earned himself maybe a contract in general with what he's done in terms of that draftee contract compared to UDFA. And that was impressive, the way that he never shied away from anybody and continued to beat some of these receivers. You take a look at, on the American team, you had a lot of players from the University of Georgia. Ladd McConkey absolutely made himself some money. I think I'm not comfortable putting him in the first round either personally.
But ESPN had a mock draft today that had him at 33, and that shocked me.
I heard people talking
leader, but my goodness.
Yeah, I mean, he's good. He runs great routes and the whole deal. I mean, you saw the highlights. I love it, but I'm not comfortable going that high. I'm still sitting like mid-second round on Ladd McConkey, and the things to me, the injury history and the physical traits. I know I probably sound like someone that hasn't watched him, but I promise you I've seen him in person probably close to 10 times now. And the thing with Ladd is just the durability. I know smaller guys can be successful, but I have those questions and I always will. And that's something that I hope that things go really well for him. And I hope he is a durable player, but that's something that I do think impacts his draft stock. And then there were some times, in the drills where there were a couple of points, maybe 7-on-7s, where I felt like he wasn't getting a lot of separation. And I kind of wondered, I was like, maybe at first I brought that up as a question, and then he came back the next period and maybe seemed a little more full go than he was. So I don't know if there were points where maybe he was on off throughout the practice, but I did think he had some moments where guys were able to kind of D up on him and get up on him. So that's something to me with Ladd that super dynamic. This may be a terrible take, but I'm going to sit middle of the second round, even though he did make a lot of money for himself this week. So he counts in this category. Tyke Smith from Georgia, I think, might have moved himself up around in terms of his performance and showing, yes, he did a lot of stuff on tape in college and then showed that again at the Senior Bowl. So I think for people kind of confirms where they are on him. And, there's a few others we'll talk about. Jamari Thrash from Louisville, I thought was solid. Roman Wilson, I think, made some money this week. So just some names of guys that might make if I were to tweet like a Senior Bowl standouts list, those would be a decent number of those guys.
Mm-hmm. It seemed like Thrash garnered a lot of Twitter headlines specifically for how badly he was beating some of the DBs on his reps, right? So tell me about him. I mean, he certainly had flashes at Louisville, and when Louisville was running hot, you're hearing Jamari Thrash. And then all of a sudden they go away, they kind of taper off down the stretch. And I feel like that media hype from the 4-letter network kind of died away, where a lot of, again, casuals are going, oh yeah, I've never heard of this guy.
Yeah, Jamari was one that I was lucky enough to cover back when he was at Troup County High School back in Georgia, West Georgia. And he's always had this ability. The thing that separates him is his ability to win deep. There's going to be times where that there's a deep route coming up, or you figure that's coming as a DB. Still can't stop him. He's one that really quick footed. The one thing to me, there were a few drops that will be one of the knocks on him. He's not a big bodied guy. So if you're looking for that, you might want someone else. But to me, when you look at Thrash, he's someone that, what he was able to do with body control, especially on deep balls, was something that I feel like you can't really teach. So that was something that I'd noted and kind of wrote down on a couple of throws where it's like, wow, good body control. Things that I don't note very often about players. I think Travis Hunter, I've had a body control note on when I've watched him play. So he's got some of those rare traits or things that I don't get to see a ton personally. So that was one to me that we talk about the transfer portal. That was a really good transfer move going to Louisville, because now you can't really question strength of competition quite as much on him. So to me, we're sitting toward probably top of the third round the way we are after the Senior Bowl. Maybe he can sneak up to the second, but that's one that I think he's solidified his spot in the top 100 with a really good week.
Yeah, love it. Let me throw a DB at you, and maybe actually I've got a couple of DBs here on my list. Quinyon Mitchell, cornerback out of Toledo, Max Melton, defensive back out of Rutgers, and then Javon Bullard, defensive back out of Georgia. You talked about Tyke Smith already. Out of all three of those, who added to their bank, what did you like from any of those three, and was there a standout from that trio?
Yeah, Quinyon Mitchell has just exploded in the draft world, and the Senior Bowl hype after day one was just to the point where you're looking at a guy from Toledo that's having to get escorted in and out of the media events because there's just too many people that want to talk to him. They've got to escort him to the podium and escort him back and try to keep people away from him from Toledo. I mean, we don't see that very often. And that's an example of what the Senior Bowl can do for small school prospects. And he was one that clearly had been doing things at that level. But we talk about first impression and last impression in practice being the two most important things at the Senior Bowl, and his first impression was just brilliant. And one of the things that stands out to me is just the way he moves at corner, the way that when he's shadowing guys, got eyes on the quarterback and he's backpedaling, he's just so smooth, and the way his hips are so fluid, to me was one thing that he lined up a few times kind of right where we were standing, and he was the cornerback at the bottom, sideline right in front of us. And just getting to watch how fluid he is was one of those that, okay, I see why people think he's different. And that's one that the hype's moving him up toward the first round, if not into it. And that's one where I'm kind of bordering. I'm actually a decent bit willing to put him into that late first round kind of territory here. And that just, he's got a lot of rare traits at corner. And it's something that, it doesn't really matter that he went to Toledo, or it doesn't matter some of the stuff that people might knock. He's quieted a lot of those things very quickly. So I've been impressed.
Luke, you started to see mock drafts that included him as cornerback 1 after day 1 at the Senior Bowl, which was wild.
Let's not go that far. Yeah. I mean, hey, I can see first round. I could see him as high as probably pick 20 right now, but I don't know if I'm going CB1 here. That's the thing with Senior Bowl media, man. I get it. It's cool. At some points, it can feel like a summer camp high in a way of you're here with everybody that's somebody in the football world. And it's easy to let the emotions get to you. And I think I've done that in the past. I think my first year I absolutely did. And after that, I was like, all right, we got to grow from this. We can't be watching one guy, break up a couple of passes and then say that, he's going in the top 10. So that's the thing that I've gathered from it. And that's the thing too, of when I say Quinyon Mitchell's moved his way up to maybe 20, that to me means a lot, because I try not to say that about guys, especially with just a couple of evaluations. And that to me, I try to reserve that kind of praise, but Mitchell, to quantify him versus the other guys we've talked about, that was one that really just blew everybody away. You don't really care who you are.
Well, to your point, 20 is typically at least nearing, if not the cutoff for true first round evaluations, right? Like, no one that actually studies the draft is under the impression that you have 32 first round grades on guys, right? So typically you're going to have 17 to 20, 21, maybe 23, 24 if it's a really, really special year, true first round grades. So I think that hesitancy is we got to kind of protect those anointed first round grades. I certainly appreciate it. But boy, his tape looked good. There's something in the water down there in Mobile. Y'all might need to start having some baptisms down there or something, because it's getting everybody hot and bothered.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing of the environment's really cool. It's the best networking event, I think, that, I mean, really as good as it gets outside of when you start getting to NFL events, draft, combine, Super Bowl. That's obviously a different league. But for people, in terms of it being accessible to people, you know, like us, for example, that are kind of working our way up in media, or for fans that just want to get close to players and be around it, this is that type of thing where it's the event where you go and this is what you do. And then you go and you see Mike Tomlin, you're, 10 feet away from Dabo Sweeney and these kinds of guys that are just these heroic figures in college or pro football. Mario Cristobal walks by and puts his sunglasses on, and it's a really cool feel. Really cool.
Gracious, how about that?